Okay, for being here with this warm weather. When I was talking with Beatriz about how we would build this panel, we were thinking about, of course, a little bit of Brazil and the location of the country, but also what I think would be very nice to have around the world, which is the pathway that comes from CCS and arriving CDR strategies and how we believe that it could be built. So I choose the panelists wisely to as a representation of the way and the pathway that I believe that would be really nice to have in terms of projects that develop CCS, but have in mind in the near future maybe removes CO2 as well. So I think to start the panel, I really would like to have you all presenting yourself, because I believe it's better when we present ourselves. But more than personal presentations, maybe talk about a little bit of the kind of projects that you work with, because we choose just project developers to be here talking about CCS and CDR. So it would be very nice to have your own view about your projects and how the project was built and the goal that you have in terms of CCS and or CDR. I know we don't have all the projects aiming to do CDR today, but talk about how and why you develop a CCS project. Please, you can start.
Thank you, Isabella. There were a lot of questions there, so I'll start, and then we can probably dive in through the rest of the panel. But I'm Hilde Rød. I head up climate and sustainability in Equinor. Equinor is a Norwegian headquartered international energy company. Our main business is within oil and gas, but we also do carbon capture and storage, or the transportation and storage part of it, and renewables. And we also have a quite large presence here in Brazil, where we do both renewables and oil and gas. So for us, we've been an oil and gas company for 50 years. When we look 50 years ahead, we think we will be a very different company, much broader. So transition is of course a very core part of our strategy. We aim to become a much broader energy company. That means of course developing more than oil and gas, so also renewables. But we also believe CCS will be a very important part of our portfolio. So as part of our strategy and transition plan, we have, first of all, we'll produce oil and gas with as low emissions as possible. That's an important part. We want to grow within renewables significantly over the next years. And then we've set a hairy target of storing 30 to 50 million tons of CO2 per year by 2035. So that's the emission we have within CCS. Sorry. Warm and slippery today. So we have the emissions, and we have started. We have 20 years of experience with storing CO2 linked to our own fields at the Norwegian continental shelf. So we know that it can be stored safely and that the technology is there. The next thing is about making it commercially viable. And this year we've had a real milestone with the first injection and permanent storage of CO2 at a project called Northern Lights outside the coast of Norway, where we had the first CO2 from Heidelberg Cement injected and stored in, I think it was in August, and actually watched a specially built ship sailing by our office outside of Oslo, heading for the cement factory. So that was quite a milestone.
It's an amazing project. We have been there. So Malaysia has also an important project that uses CCS as a way to decarbonize production. Can you talk a little bit? And we have both been in Northern Lights project your project? I'm so sorry.
Okay, Lauren. So I'm very sort of talking about specific project. Yep, it's better. Yeah. Okay. I'm probably going to be speaking more about this bigger role that we have, especially in the context of Malaysia, and I'm going to maybe expand it on Asia Pacific. And for Petronas, we are a national oil company for Malaysia, but we're also a regulator of the oil and gas resources. So we've got this bigger aspiration, especially when we talk about the context of Malaysia. And it's part of our, we like to call ourselves an energy super score, where you would be looking into the kind of proposition that we do in terms of oil, low carbon oil and gas, and that now extend, that also includes LNG, and that now extend to a new proposition that we've got, which is CCS. And for us, CCS is beyond just a decarbonization level. And I'm going to talk a bit more about this context, because you would know in Asia and Africa especially how gas is important in terms of what they call a, not just a transition fuel, but a destination fuel for a low carbon future. And it's important because it's also energy security and it's growth for the region as well. And when we talk about the context of Asia Pacific and why Malaysia comes in, and you know that Asia Pacific today by 2050 would actually hold 5.2 billion people in the world. And to Asia Pacific alone would actually consume 50% of the energy demand of the world. Hence the need to decarbonize is actually a lot stronger, and the way to do that as part of the decarbonization lever is by having CCS. And this is where Petronas comes in, or Malaysia comes in the overall context. Because Malaysia, and I do hope some of you have been to Malaysia, a beautiful country with a lot of offering. And this is where we are centrally located in Asia Pacific, what we like to call the heart or gateway to the industries within Asia Pacific. And the proposition that we've got, becoming the heart of Asia Pacific, is these large resources of storage that we do within the country. So today, we are able to actually store more than 13 gigatons of CO2. And these are just coming from depleted reservoir. We have not accounted saline and river yet. And because of the unique proposition and the ambition that we do have, we can see how this depleted reservoir provides a financial advantage, because it does come with a lower options for carbon capture and storage. Today, as a hub, and this is where Malaysia comes in as the chair of ASEAN this year, and 11-member country, that's now the 5th largest economy in the world, is able to actually support the decarbonization, especially for the hard to abate sector within Asia Pacific. Hence, when we talk about this ambition that we've got, right, and I'm really glad when we actually took this next step forward this year, when we gazetted our CCS Act, which was very monumental, because with the CCS Act, we don't just decarbonize our own operation, we're offering solution for CO2 within Malaysia, where our storage today are able to actually do that, but we're now extending it to cross-border CO2 storage solution for Asia Pacific as well. So I think this is where we are coming in, and we're looking forward to actually having seen how Malaysia is actually putting ourselves in this whole equation. By 2030, we're looking at doing 50 million tons, and we're currently on track. And I think this whole proposition of decarbonization, leveraging on CCS, and supporting hard-to-abate sector will be a key component of how we operate.
Before I ask the question for Carlos, I would ask both of you, because I think there is a specificity of the project that is about the cross-border CO2. Can you share just a little bit of which are the countries that you take the CO2 from, and if you are willing to expand this cross-border capture of CO2?
Yes, so currently the first load that we've done in this Norwegian project is from a factory in Norway, but the aim is to really be a hub, to what you said, and it's an open source project, so we can basically take CO2 from anywhere, but we are of course aiming for the hard-to-abate sector, particularly in northwestern Europe, where there are a lot of industrial clusters. You have cement, you have also petrochemical industry, etc. So, and the aim is also to build actually a pipeline as infrastructure. Currently we transport by ship, but really aiming at this cluster, industrial cluster. And we also have agreements with Ørsted on bioenergy CCS solution, that's from Denmark, and also with Stockholm Exergy, so that's from Sweden. So Nordics and Northwestern Europe for this particular project. And then we have a similar, or not similar, but another project in the UK, which is aiming at a specific industrial cluster in the Humber region. So also a industry cluster where there is a lot of CO2 in one area.
Can you share a little bit of the cross-border countries that you are planning to capture in the future?
Right. So we had a lot of learning as well, right? Economic and how we do it. I think we do see the same value proposition within Asia Pacific, and like I mentioned just now, there is a great value proposition because we need to decarbonize, especially for hard to abate. So today we do have MOUs and work in place with our counterparts, especially we are working with JobMag, MATI and all that. So we are targeting a lot of these developed country and developing that's looking into enabling a cross-border at the moment.
So now we saw oil and gas experience put in place CCS, but actually using CO2 from other sectors. I know Paves project, and this project is purely CDR. So I think you can start explain this amazing project that will be implemented in Brazil, and maybe talking about your courage to start straight CDR project.
You know my project because you're my lawyer, right?
Yes, I know.
She doesn't get paid well. Speak up or change her mind. Yep. She's my lawyer. She doesn't get paid well, so she's not talking about the pitfalls of the project because we have a deal. But anyway, I'm the founder of an investment company. We started some 25 years ago developing carbon offsets and carbon projects. We now have equity participation in several businesses, including ACX, which is one of the largest carbon exchanges in the world, shareholders of some other two companies in Brazil to focus on carbon accounting, and as well potentially the largest trader of carbon credits in Brazil, always with a focus in energy. We're under the radar in Brazil because we don't like nature-based, we like tech-based. I've been wrong, but I'll be right. In a couple of years, everybody will find out that nature-based doesn't work for Brazil. We cannot export carbon offsets. Otherwise, we won't be able to meet our NDCs. I know I'm saying that Vital is making faces, but whenever I have the chance, I make sure that I speak up about tech-based solutions for Brazil as opposed to nature-based only. I'm very worried about the fact that we don't account for a second order effect in Brazil of nature-based projects. I don't think we get paid enough to protect the forest, and we don't account for that. Having said all that, many years ago, some 15 years ago, we started buying permits for small hydro plants and wind projects. I started measuring wind speed, and it was very difficult at the time, but we won a tender sponsored by government of Brazil. I liked the hype of project development, and we learned a lot from the wind and then biomethane. And I figured that was more of a chance for us to be successful in something that wasn't fashionable 5 years ago, which was negative emissions associated to carbon capture and storage and the ethanol sector. Given our expertise with the sugar mills in Brazil and our commercial relationship with the sugar mills in Brazil, we started collecting CO2 long-term supply agreements. And together with Isabella, with her help, we acquired the rights to explore potential oil and gas site countryside of the state of São Paulo with a small oil and gas company local in Brazil. We started developing that site some 3 years ago, and now we're about to finish the pre-feed stage. The region can deliver about 20 million tons of CO2 from the fermentation volume alone. If we account for the cogen plants as well, we're looking north of 50 million tons per year, potentially the largest BECCS hub in the world. We have about 2 billion tons storage capacity in the 2 wells that we're drilling just now. It looks very promising. We're happy with the regulatory framework that was published, the draft regulatory framework that was published a couple of weeks ago. It works for the methodologies that we're going to be using, focusing on gold standard right now. But going forward, 3-4 years down the road, I believe we're going to be putting aside the carbon offsets and selling negative emissions ethanol and electricity. So looks very promising. Hopefully the regulatory framework and licensing is not going to be an issue for us, but looks promising.
So what I think we can see as a first lesson here is the fact that in some way all the projects work like a hub. Because one source of capture is not enough to make a project economically viable. So even though it's a cross-border hub or a local hub like in São Paulo where we have a lot of industries, we need to have a hub with these projects in place. So moving like more CDR questions, I think your project already have like CDR ways. I think it's Switzerland, Denmark, Finland. So I think it would be nice to have your point of view of how the CDRs will be implemented. Is in your pathway to have more CDR projects? Because I think it's clear that for oil and gas, it's a must-have. For hard to abate, it's actually a must-have in the ETS context. But CDRs are important for mitigation, but are challenging because the agents that does CDR, they are not like compliant yet to do this. So how do you see CDR projects in your other line hub?
Yes, so we do both, what can I say, we do CCS with the CO2 captured from all types of sources, both biogenic and non-biogenic. So, but first of all, I think we all know that carbon removals is needed in the long term to reach net zero. But I also think we can't ignore in a way that there is a cost. We need to get costs down. So at the moment, the technology-based solutions are costly and quite limited in scale. So I think we will need all kinds of solutions for quite some time. And what we see is that if we're able to build out CCS at scale, open source, both to help hard to abate companies to reduce their emissions and then over time move to more removals, we hope that that can actually help get the costs down. Because if we use the same infrastructure, it's the same type of policy frameworks, etc., that can be reused. So really getting scale on CCS, I think, will also help to pave the way for more of it to be of the removal kind. But then you also need customers that are willing to pay. And I think there is also a mitigation hierarchy here. So we also, I think it's perfectly okay to help industry reduce as much as possible first by using CCS, for example, and then you can move to the removals for the sort of residual emissions. So for us, it's both a stepwise approach, but also it's really the scale that is needed. I don't see these as competing, but as complementary. And you know, the removals are the highest quality, but also the most expensive at the moment, and I think just doing everything we can to get costs down so it's a more viable solution for companies, I think is very important.
That's very nice. Would you agree to say that oil and gas and parts of it in some way are financing the infrastructure for the future CDRs?
Well, I think it's fair to say that also governments have taken a fair share of some of the costs in these first projects, because it is first of a kind, and you do need support, and we've seen that it's very important to also have risk capital intensive long-term projects to build out both the storage but also the infrastructure that is needed. So you need some kind of predictability, both that this will be allowed to be accounted for, etc., and can be used, but also that there is a buyer at the other end. So I think it's definitely sort of a partnership approach that is needed.
You were talking about risk, sharing risks, and I think that's a good way to ask Sulosh about the framework. We know that Malaysia is taking a step to define a regulatory framework for CCS use, and this is a way to de-risk projects in some way. Could you please comment about this framework and how Petronas has played this central role to help it, and maybe talk about ICCS in a way that make this framework possible and as an incentive for projects?
Yeah. I think I'm going to start and talk about CCS in Malaysia. It's actually a national agenda. So it's part of our, what we call National Energy Transition Roadmap, one of the 10 catalyze projects. So that shows how important it is as part of the national agenda. And when our CCS Act was actually rolled out, we saw a way of, there's two ways of we actually see how CCS operates in Malaysia. And this is where it's a bit unique when we talk about this dual role or dual regime of CCS in Malaysia. One, CCS as a petroleum operation where you need it to decarbonize. So for Petronas, we are still a regulator in Malaysia. So we still regulate CCS as petroleum operation in Malaysia. But there's another part, and this is where, again, when we talk about a national agenda beyond decarbonization, CCS is also an economic growth for the country. So it will spur a new economic sector in Malaysia. So hence why when we actually look at CCS as a service, as a value proposition, we actually created, the government actually created a new regulatory body called BECCS, and this regulatory body acts under the Ministry of Economy, because we do see it as a new economic sector, which they would be doing all the defining, the regulatory, issuing permit, and all of the monitoring associated with CCS for hard-to-abate sector and CCS as a service in the country. So the unique role that we see how we come in and support is where when the government decides to do this as an economic sector, they would need a competent body to actually support CCS. So this is where they would have actually appointed what they call CTE, competent technical entity, that will support the technical aspect of advisory to CCS. And this is where Petronas comes in. So when you talk about offshore operation, especially in depleted reservoir, where we have a lot more access and information, Petronas will be able to actually work with CCS in supporting the agency when they actually roll out permit and all that. But Petronas is just one of the many competent technical entities that is actually supporting the government. And see this to be like a good collaboration because government is acting on behalf of the nation, trying to a new economy, but they do this with the support of not technical authority that has a lot more knowledge for the area. And for us, this is working at well because we don't see it as an oil and gas operation, we see it as an economic sector governed by Ministry of Economy.
It's amazing to hear that CCS is becoming a sector by itself because that's what we hope. We need to have CO2 price, we need to have people work like just for CCS, and I think this point of view that we are seeing CCS in all terms as a sector is really it's an important message to an economy, and I really would like that Brazil take this in account to the same here. So moving now again to CDRs, and as Juana was explaining how they exchange knowledge to build regulation, to build the sector. I think we have something here that is similar, that we are trying to help ANP with the sandbox regulatory to build the regulation while we are developing the projects. So as a first mover of a CDR project, how do you think you can help with this know-how? And I really would like you to talk about also about the carbon credits, because I think this is the part of the regulatory environment that we need to build to put these projects in place. So your knowledge about carbon credits will be really useful also.
Okay, starting with the carbon offsets. Today we don't have a proper regulatory framework in Brazil that allows us to price removals of the underlying activity. As I said 5 minutes ago, I hope that in 10 years' time, Brazil will be delivering ethanol, biofuel negative emissions, electricity negative emissions, as opposed to selling carbon offsets within a voluntary market framework. As I said, I've been in the business for 25 years. My background is regulated markets. I'm a Kyoto trader, hoping that my projects will be eligible under the Paris Accord. I believe that Vera, Gold Standard, GCC, they're all heroes. They're here for us, but going forward, I hope that we'll be selling the offsets under a regulated framework. I've been in the situation where we are developing carbon offset projects with large hydro plants, and NGOs would come to us and say this is not right, and I would give them the telephone number of Brussels. Go talk to the United Nations, go talk to the European Union. We want to be back into that situation where we can just point towards the regulated entity. It looks very promising. A couple of weeks ago, removals were sort of accepted when it comes to permanent removals. There was an issue about nature-based because the nature-based is not permanent as a given. And I believe, again, because it's fashionable to talk nature-based solutions in Brazil, there was a big fuzz about it, but that's science. If we want to address climate change, we want to remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and tech-based solutions are better suited for that. My take is that we'll be playing the voluntary market for a couple of years. Hopefully the first contracts that we're signing today, the ERPA's emission reduction purchase agreements, will be selling 10 years forward But by the time we do other ERPAs in perhaps 2 years, we'll be playing the regulatory framework of the United Nations. Article 6.4 and Article 6.2. And again, Brazil has a competitive advantage when it comes to using the sun and the water and the land to capture emissions, and we should be focusing on that. And not miss the chance of doing something that is good for the country. Brazil keeps missing the opportunities that are ahead of us. You have other questions for me to badmouth my country, no?
I am more optimistic that we are going to do the right thing.
You're young.
Yes, I do. So I think, starting linking his answer with the policies in Europe, I would like to hear what was and maybe what will be that you believe will be the role of the policies to reduce emissions in the European Union, to give any kind of incentive to non-reliance. Because I believe you took in account the cap and trade system and every policy that the European Union will put in place. Now it's not so fast as it opened, but was an important sign of price and important sign of growth. So how do you see the past and how do you see the future?
Yes, well, I think the policy framework is absolutely crucial for this to work, and there are many parts of it. I think in the past we've spent quite a lot of time just getting more permitting, to move ahead and get access to acreage, etc. And then of course it's the price mechanisms that need to work, because if you're making an investment, you need to know that there is a customer and that someone are willing to pay, and that is very much linked to either a regulatory requirement or a cap and trade system or some kind of CO2 price. But we see there has been both carrots and sticks involved. Both the Norwegian government, they have a large part in sort of funding this first Northern Lights open source project, as do the UK government in the UK. But going forward, we believe that things need to be more economically independent to some extent. But that means there needs to be some kind of incentive for emitters to pay for either reduction or renewable solutions. So in Europe we see that the CO2 price is absolutely crucial, because and you can see the interest in CCS, sort of it's moving with the EU ETS price basically. So and I think there can be other solutions in other countries, but you need, if you can either emit with no penalty, or you can pay a price for storing. As a company, it's very easy to choose the free option. So it needs to be also economically viable. So then you either need a price that is higher than the price of storing, or some other kind of premium that you get carbon credit or whatever. So we are very fond of carbon pricing. We think that works. We've seen it work. We also think the ETS systems, mandatory systems. So I very much agree that we need this integrated into Article 6. I think we need an integration with mandatory compliance schemes as well, for this to really kick off. And then you need good certification frameworks and opportunities for cross-border. That has been a big challenge for us. If you want to capture CO2 in one country and store it in another one, it's not straightforward with the rules of today. So we need consistent but pragmatic and good frameworks that work globally.
It doesn't matter how mature you are, you need lawyers to improve everything. That's very happy to know. Do you have any comments about carbon price that you want to add? Or any
I totally agree with Lola, but in Malaysia we don't have carbon price yet, right? And then there needs to be carrot instead, and the driver between the what do you call it, the inflation will help support. But as modified, I mean, some form of policy and risk sharing needs to come before we come to a world where we could have an economical and commercial CCS economy.
I think now moving to another topic, which for me is really nice to talk about. It's about collaboration between countries to put CCS in place. All the meetings, like international meetings that we attend, this is an issue. Everybody's talking about how to collaborate because actually we are trying to implement the projects and we had a hard time to implement. So I think there is a common sense in the CCS world that collaboration is something really important. So Suhana, how do you see the collaboration has been an important essential in Malaysia to advance CCS projects? And if you have any examples of partnerships that you made that worked, would be really nice to hear.
Before I talk about collaboration, I'm going to take a stab at Carlos. You know, my head of nature-based solution is here as well. I can see interesting conversation happening between nature-based and technology after this. So I look forward to that. But okay, coming to collaboration, and I think this is when we started earlier. I think Hilda, you spoke about it when we talk about risk sharing, right? That there must be some risk sharing happen, and that could only be effectively done when we collaborate and have effective partnership altogether. This can be between company and company, and thank you so much. I think we've also learned a lot from you with the government, with the industry, with the university, and then including community. I think one large part when we actually look at Malaysia as a storage solution for Asia Pacific, we looked into not just from capture, storing the terminals, the pipeline, but how do you make sure that you could do this effectively? And supply chain is like a big sector, and we know that when we wanted to do this, we need to develop technology that will enable, for example, if you're going to take CO2 from as far as Japan, and Japan is like 5,000 kilometers away from Malaysia, how do you make sure that you could actually how could you make sure you could actually transport CO2 from all the way down to Malaysia? And so that's why when we started, multiple MOUs were signed because we need to make sure that we could actually do this with collaboration with all sectors, in all elements, capture, or transport and all that. And one that I like pretty much was on transport. Today we are developing a low CO2 carrier that would enable us to transport CO2 as far as Japan or even further, right? It is commercially and economically feasible. And what we're trying to develop today is 8 times the size of low CO2 carrier that you see operating already today, right? And this is a 62,000 cubic meter ship capacity that last year has gotten the approval from the DNV on the design. So we are progressing well, and we are on track to actually achieve this full transport before 2030. But other parts that we talk about collaboration is even in Brazil, and if you are in Brazil, you know there is huge obligation on R&D that company has to take, like a certain portion of revenue have to actually go into R&D. Today, we repurpose that to make sure that we could support the enterprise agenda. So 1/3 of our R&D today are actually on CCS, because we know that it's important for the country as we embark on this CCS decree that I hope to be launched soon. But also how do we support this whole big agenda, not just in Malaysia, but for the oil and gas industry. In other parts, like we work a lot with the Japanese, JOGMEC, METI, etc., because they do have their own advanced CCS program, and we know that they need to decarbonize, and this is where Malaysia comes in terms of providing study support, how they can actually do solutioning on the storage as well. But other than that, we do collaborate with our partners within Asia Pacific as well. We are working on a CCS project in one of the countries within Southeast Asia, and this is a sizable CCS project that has been stalled for 20 years. 20 TCF. And we know that by collaborating together between national oil companies, we're able to unlock gas and able to provide energy security. So I do think with a lot more collaboration, we're able to actually do this together as an industry, and it takes all sectors, companies, industries, universities, even the community.
Could we say that we are building a sector that's not based on competition, but is based in collaboration? It's a really helpful thing. So can you share a little bit about collaboration as well?
Yes, I think collaboration is essential, and particularly the public-private partnerships that we see, because you do see a big role for governments here. But I do think we need competition as well, because if we want really to make this an attractive solution for customers, you need enough players so that you get the costs down. So I think we need both, and we should cherish both. No, we've had, I think, one of the most important things for us has really been the value chain perspective, because a lot of private solutions have this chicken or egg, everyone are waiting for someone else to make the first step. So for us at least, it's been very important also to have government entities bringing different parts of the value chain together, the emitters, the storers, those who do capture technology, etc., and trying to make a framework that incentivizes different parts of the value chain. So it's rather than looking at only one piece at a time, tying it all together. So, but I think we need collaboration and fierce competition as well.
Thank you. I was trying to be like really. So I think moving from offshore projects with the state financing, helping financing the project, your project is a lonely, private, really private project, and it's onshore. So when we are talking about collaboration, makes sense. The question is, makes sense talking about collaboration in a specific onshore project in São Paulo, or do you think you will like go to the competition side and move along?
I fear when we talk collaboration with oil and gas companies, because you're big. So how do I collaborate with the majors? And also, every time that there is something like put together a group of large companies, it's very easy for that to turn into a cartel or something that would prevent. I mean, it's an honest conversation, right? So I'm not so sure about this in a broader sense. I believe in collaboration mediated by the government, because that is what society decided to do through Congress, through legislation, and multilateral efforts, as we see with Article 6.4 in this particular case, trade within countries. That is something that I believe is good for our projects. But I collaboration in a broader sense may eventually turn into something that gets out of control. Having said that, the regulatory framework, voluntary market was created based on collaboration with governments, private sector, all sorts of stakeholders. So that is happening already, and we're here for a common goal. At the end of the day, we do believe that climate change is a major issue for mankind, humankind, right? So, but I sometimes I fear that in a country such as Brazil, of crony capitalism, when we put everybody inside a room and we say, let's collaborate, the moment you exit it, there is a cartel of oil and gas companies, my friend, big towers. Please don't blame me for that. But I fear that depending on how we promote that, all of a sudden the small developers are taken out of the game. succeed. I'm worried about that.
This is a problem. Whenever you have limitations and small players, because actually it's easy. But I think we are projects that would accept a small project. Of a small agent, I wouldn't say a small project, but a small agent that wants to put in place a big project and maybe thinking about collaboration will be useful in the near future. Don't blame everybody.
I'm just saying it's very asymmetric relationship when it comes to project development and then a sector that is the oil and gas sector. So, but I haven't said that, for the first time in my life, I'm on the side of Petrobras and sugarcane producers. So, first time in my life, I'm on the right side of the equation really. So I'm happy. I hope they collaborate with me.
Big movers. So I think we are taking our time here, but I think one common question that I would like to ask it is in some ways you have answered that, maybe organizing to specific answer this. Is as we see the IPCC scenarios, we really would need removals as soon as possible. And we discussed it here that CCS can pave the way to CDR. So the question is, what do you think is still needs to happen for the escalate CDR through CCS? Because maybe the question is wrong, but it's my belief. I really think that CCS will pave the way. So what do you think it's needed to escalate to through CCS?
Well, first of all, I think it already has paved the way, and I think we have examples. We have both, what should I say, CCS from hard-to-abate sectors, but we also have bioenergy and CCS tied to the same project with the customer, and we both in Sweden and Denmark. So we are an example of it has already paved the way, but I think there is still. The world is still quite far away from where it should be in terms of the climate trajectory. So I think we can't, in a way, only go for the sort of top quality, most costly solution. I think that needs to be part of the portfolio, but we need a broad solution. And I think there is enough CO2 for everyone, sadly. So I think we need to work on all of this. But for carbon removal specifically to be attractive, I think then you need some kind of premium or incentive, and I think there are some first mover companies that are willing to maybe pay an additional price for this at the moment, but maybe not at scale. So I think that the integration into mandatory schemes, for example, like EU ETS, etc., would be perhaps a game changer. But carbon removals will not alone solve everything, so it's part of a totality.
I will add a comment here. Is, we are trying to structure a panel for CDR team, and I wanted to find an off-taker to sit in the stage and say, okay, we are willing to pay CDRs, because the thing is, we have Microsoft, but Microsoft will be able to buy all the CDRs that we need and pay the price that we need to achieve. So I really miss to find, maybe I'm doing wrong, I don't know, but I am really missing to find huge off-takers that are able to sit there and say, okay, we are willing to pay a lot of money, buy a lot of these carbon credits, and I think this would be really helpful to put the projects in a large scale. So make your point.
Right. So we talk about CCS, CDR, renewable, and I do like we talk about all of this. It's not about and it's not about all. It has to be like all complementary all together. But while we talk about policy, we talk about things that will enable from technology commercialization. I just would like to touch like one bit, which is public engagement. And I think there's a lot of needs today. While we are from the business side, but when you talk about community, and there's still a lot of resistance, especially when you talk about even CCS at the moment. I think that's the large part where I think there's a lot of collaboration within the industry that needs to be done in terms of advocacy. Today, what we do in Malaysia is, as we spur this new economy, is try to actually have the positive narrative about what CCS is all about and how this will actually help spur economy. So today we work with university, for example, trying to actually embed some form of advocacy and knowledge in terms of what CCS is in their module. We actually Petronas have our own science center. So we welcome 125,000 students every year. So what we did was we also embed a part of the knowledge on CCS so that the public will be able to actually learn a bit more about CCS. And over the past year, what we've also done to actually reach out to a mass market where we work with Warner Brothers, where we actually produce 3 documentaries about what is CCS and about what Petronas is doing in terms of decarbonization, net zero emission, and how CCS plays a big part of it. We've published this in Discovery Channel and Asia Discovery Channel to make sure that we could actually reach out to a broader market. So I think these are the kind of things that we could collaborate together, because there still need to be a lot, because they need to know that when a CCS economy comes to them, it doesn't just benefit the country, it benefits them as a community, as they get employment, they get jobs, and when there's more people mobilized into the city where they are, there's a lot more money for everyone. So I think getting the support, government, industry, as well as community is important, and things that we could do a lot more together.
I couldn't agree more. We are in CCS Brazil, like really advocating for public perceptions work. We always say to our members, this is an issue in the society, it's important. And if they agree, if they think CCS is nice and will help to build a good economy, we will have to support. So I couldn't agree more. So last but not least, your comments about what do we still need to put CDRs in place?
I'm very bullish. I think it's going to happen regardless of the move for removals worldwide. It's going to be very clear within a couple of years that transition means using of fossil fuels, usage of fossil fuels for many years to go, and that society should not focus on breaking out the oil and gas industry, but actually working with the oil and gas industry to solve the problem at hand. Once that becomes clear, the oil and gas industry has the resources to implement all sorts of projects associated with renewables within the industry, outside of the industry. One of the beauties of doing a BECCS project in Brazil is that you're talking to perhaps the most sophisticated value chain in the world. You can get quotations of any sort of equipment just because everything that we do is also associated with oil and gas. So it looks very promising. Maybe I won't be successful, but I'm very sure that in 10 years' time we're going to be talking about lots of projects, CCS projects, BECCS projects worldwide. Very bullish.
Thank you for ending this. Thank you all for being here. I think we have a moment to Q&A. If you all have any questions, okay, I will give you the microphone.
So hi, my name is Yvonne. I'm from Delta Electronics. And because we are electronics company, we are not like the hot-bed industry. We don't see the necessity to invest CDR or CCS. The reason, the only motivations that would stimulate us to invest in CDR is on green have the commitment to the SBTI one net zero pathway. So right now we are thinking how to use CDR to offset our remaining 10% emission. But the problem that we encounter is that if today we invest in one particular CDR project, but that project is not within our value chain boundaries, then how much removal, the carbon removal, the amount can we be allocated, and how can we plan that we really do some removal thing? That's my question.
That was the wrong microphone. I think very good question, and I think when it comes to removals, my understanding is that you should definitely be able to allocate it to your budget. But I do think you raise a very important issue, because in the ideal world, maybe everyone could sit and look at their boundaries and find the specific solutions. I think we're at a stage where, let's be a little bit pragmatic, and if companies like yours with residual emissions invest and are willing to invest in carbon removals with high quality, then I think you should only be applauded. And if the frameworks don't allow, I think it's time to actually do some advocacy or challenge the frameworks, because that would be a very high-level approach as I see it. You follow the mitigation hierarchy, you have a little bit of residual emissions, and you aim for the top quality removal credits. I can't see how a framework should allow for that. So that would be at least sort of my approach, that you've done everything right, and maybe then it's time to look at whether there is some more pragmatism needed.
My only concern is that if we price it wrong today, if it's mandatory that you purchase removals today at an early stage in terms of development of the industry, you're going to be paying a lot more than your fair share today. So I fear that if society is not able to allocate the cost wisely, it will be a burden to the economy of the country, and then all of a sudden we'll be ruling out people. So I would be cautious with the mandate to purchase offset removals from CCS and BECCS project as of today across the board.
I think it's about equilibrium. So the advocacy, I think you are completely right, and I think the world is like seeing the importance of CDR and basically all CDRs. So I think all the policy making right now are trying to build a framework that deals with the problem that Carlos mentioned, but also push the CPR mandates because they are needed. So I think we will find, everybody will discuss and we'll find. So the next question.
My name is Kika. I'm from Japan, and I'm from the Business Research Institute. We're one of the founding members of the Japan CDR Council, which was founded a month ago. And thank you for mentioning Japan, our Malaysian friend. I hope to catch up with you later. And I quote what the previous speaker said about companies investing in CDR needs to be recognized for their effort, whether it's investing a huge amount of money for carbon capture technology or investing in purchasing of credits. Throughout our activities on facilitating this Japan CDR Council, what I heard from most contributing to. So I think, everyone's not Microsoft. Microsoft may be able to make their own rules, but most companies cannot. They won't abide by GHG protocol, SBTi, or any other international standards. So I think maybe more work would need to be done towards pragmatism, and also I think more information sharing. Companies have successfully claimed the credits as part of the reduction efforts. Such information needs to be shared more widely, so it can be followed by many other companies that want to make it.
Someone wants to comment?
I can maybe just say I very much support that, and I would actually encourage also all the potential users of these kind of credits to address this advocacy issue, because I think it's even stronger if it comes from you. I think those offering this kind of solution have said this for a long time. If it's only something you do for a do-good, but you can't even take it into your GHG accounts or recognize it in some kind of target, then what incentives are left in the voluntary space. So I think, and it's a bit sad if that is stopping actually some progress to be made. And I'm talking about, of course, this being part of a mitigation hierarchy, but you're all working very systematically on removing emissions. So I would encourage also other industries actually to address this, because it's a real hurdle at the moment.
You have a question?
Can you hear me? Yeah, my name is Kalyani and I'm a ESG practitioner, and then also work with carbon removal project developers in India and also in America. So I wanted to know how you as a Petronas are you incorporating ESG safeguards, or how are you including the ESG concepts when you actually choose the project, or when you invest, or when you negotiate or collaborate with project developers? Because most of the time I only hear about social aspect, but not environmental and governance safeguards. I don't want a comprehensive answer, but just a brief. I really want to learn your opinion on it. Thank you.
Right. So when you talk about carbon removal, there's the technology and in base, and when you talk about the ESG safeguard, of course, there are elements. For us, we've got our Petronas carbon compliance for all of the projects that we go through to make sure that it ticks all of the boxes from, safety, security, and environmental impact, regulatory, and all that. So it's quite comprehensive from that perspective. But I just want to bring you to one thing that we've actually just launched a couple of days ago as leading up to COP. And one of the efforts that we do today in terms of carbon removal, carbon credit, we've just launched a innovation challenge with regards to nature-based solution. Because for us, we do believe in the beauty of how nature-based solution would actually help for this. So what we're trying to do is actually find high quality, highly ethical carbon credit solutions out there, and we're doing this through a collaboration or partnership with the industry, with the university, startups, and all that. So if you look through Innovation Challenge Brazil.br.co, you'll be able to actually see a very transparent way of how we evaluate all of the carbon credit projects that needs to be in our pipeline. So this would be the 3 themes around deforestation, blue carbon, and I forgot one more, but it has a complete list of the whole environment, not just environment, not just from environmental, but also social. Because when we do this, we want to make sure that we work with the community, and we don't just do it as or just because we want to reduce emission, but we want to make sure that the community is involved as we do this. Why we always like to talk about social and community, because we want to make sure that we do this as one whole ecosystem rather than just a company vision of actually trying to actually reduce emission. So we're quite transparent from that perspective. So if you look into the site, you will see how we actually evaluate and we actually choose of all our carbon credit projects.
I do corporate stewardship, and one of the main principles experts is basically, how are you analyzing that they understand what corporates are seeking and vice versa. You know what I mean? But it seems to be mostly like one-sided so far. So there needs to be more work needs to be done. You know what I mean? The corporates like yours should be doing more of awareness actually. So yeah, this is what I'm thinking. But yeah, thank you so much.
Look at it, you're right. Advocacy and awareness and transparency.
So, thank you for your question. Anyone else have a question? Okay, here we go. Last question.
My name is Alex, same organization where you come from. So I guess my question is more about the technology side. We talk about nature-based removal, and then technology-based, you talk about carbon-negative ethanol and then electricity. So I want to know a little bit about petroleum products because for industries, we buy raw material that's petroleum-based like plastics, things like that. So how does that play in your CCS or CDR field? Because you can probably attach the negative carbon you capture or sequestrate it to your products. So how does that play in your field, right?
I'm going to start first, I think. So when you talk about decarbonization levels, for us CCS is just one off. So other elements that we look at are zero venting and flaring. So we no longer do that, especially continuous, and that helps reduce a lot of the emissions. I think today we have actually done more than 60% less emissions than since we started this journey in 2013. Beyond that, it's also energy efficiency. As much as how we actually run our plant and our operation, that help as well. And there's a lot of substitute to a low carbon fuel that comes in. So there's a lot of factors. CCS for us is not just one; it's just one of the many decarbonization things that we do it. And we do see that when we talk about this pathway to net zero, all of the plans that we've got in place today are actually has significantly reduced our emission and moving it very close to really net zero by 2050.
I think similarly we used a lot of technology to decarbonize our own operations, electrification. We even have offshore floating wind fueling one of our offshore production assets, etc. We work on methane, flaring, all of this, and with very good results. But when it comes to CCS as such, it can be used, I think, and can be used, of course, in combination with, we do, for example, here in Brazil, we have combined cycle gas turbines in some of our floating production assets here. First of its kind technology to reduce emissions. And you can, of course, also use it with gas power plants. We're primarily upstream, but we do have one example of a gas power plant in UK where you use CCS. Then I think also, in the longer term, it's possible to decarbonize natural gas and make it into hydrogen. What we see is that is probably moving further out in time than we expected a couple of years ago, because the demand for natural gas is still very high, particularly for us. We deliver to Europe, but with the war in Ukraine, we have, there's a huge demand for natural gas that is unabated at the moment. But there is also a pathway for the product itself to be decarbonized. But it's more costly and energy efficiency, etc. plays in. So that's also more of a longer-term solution, I think, blue and also green hydrogen.
So I would thank you so much for sharing your thoughts here. Thank you for asking questions, because usually people are very quiet and your questions are amazing. I think being here, I know it's warm and challenging, but be here in Belém to discuss all kinds of strategies that you need to put in place to remove, to do all the reductions and mitigations that you need. It's quite important, and so I'm really happy. Thank you for your time, and I do hope we do this each year, and each year we have good news to give to everybody. Thank you so much.